two friends of mine who have graduated. We call that when you've passed over. We don't say that anymore. You graduate when you leave here. Because this is a school, you see, so you graduate. Eventually I'll figure this out. So they showed up immediately to I was laying down to my left, it doesn't matter which side. And they're already over there having a good time. One was my friend Tom Sawyer, and the other one was my father-in-law, Julian, who died from the same kind of a head injury, but he didn't bounce. He was at work at Charles Pfizer in Groton, Connecticut, and he fell backwards and hit the back of his head on a piece of metal. And in those days, they didn't know what to do for you, and there was no understanding of brain function much and all that, so his head swelled and then he died. So they were both here smiling at me. And I thought, no, I'm having too much fun, I'm not coming. And then they were gone, So then I put my hand back here, and I thought maybe there's going to be blood, and if there's any brains left, that'll be coming out, And there was nothing wrong there. And I thought, oh, I'm fine, Never occurred to me that I had a major concussion or any of that. I had no headaches in 5 years, no internal injury organs or, problems. But when I finally found this doctor, he's all of 29, a beautiful soul, talks about angels and all that. He said, did you have a car accident? I said, no. Did you have a fall? I said, well, yeah, but that was like 5 years ago. He said, does it matter? So he took x-rays, and my skull was so far forward, it almost went past the atlas wedge. But it left just enough room for me to get cerebral spinal fluid down into my spinal column, so my organs were kept vital, He said, you are amazing. So anyway, he started working on me, and it's amazing for a chiropractor, because a lot of you go to chiropractors, and I have for years, but you lay on your side, and he measures the distance between your earlobe and someplace down here in my neck, and he presses. That's it. And so it's been about a year now, and I'm so much better. And I dream that I'm fine, so I know that's coming, you see. And there are times when I wake up in the morning that I can really function quite well. But I had to learn how to balance and walk some more, because I'd lost some of that, and my ability to speak was a little impaired. It still is slightly. I was like a 2-year-old. I would eat, and everything would run down the front of my shirt. It was funny. But I've learned so much from people who've had concussions and head wounds. We're like a club, And they were ready to send me in for neck surgery. They were going to cut my throat and fuse my bones. I said, I really don't want that. So the referral numbers never showed up, so I never went. So anyway, very long story short, I'm much, much better. I've learned a tremendous amount. And I've watched the loving generosity of so many total strangers. I mean, I'd get out of my car like this and going toward the door. People would run across the parking lot and open the door for me. That is so nice. And somebody said, well, you're a great healer. Why don't you heal yourself? I said, I don't want to miss something. If I'm supposed to learn something from this, if I heal myself today, maybe the thing I'm supposed to really get is tomorrow. I'm not going to be there. So, I'm working on it. But it's been a gift. Everything is a gift. It's a blessing. So why am I wearing my necklace today? Well, no, I'm not going into the Bruce Jenner Club yet. Maybe, who knows? You never know what's going to happen, right? No, these are kukui beads from Hawaii. Oh, by the way, aloha. Aloha. A nice on the aloha is good, because we're known as the people who don't have a breath. We're called howlies. But aloha is the breath of fire, the breath of life that you're giving when you give that blessing, And I've been to Hawaii several times, about 4, I think. Absolutely adored it, but I wanted to meet a real Hawaiian. It wasn't happening. I went one time and I met this guy. I think he was a kahuna, which is their magician priest. And hi, good to see you. She was just up here a minute ago. I'm teasing her. And he asked me if I was a black magician. I said, what? I had just learned that there's the white magicians and the black ones. It's nothing to do with race. It has to do with your use of your energy. And I said, well, no. Because you see, a black magician can pray you to death. Like an ex-husband or wife, right? So I thought, no, I'm not. Well, he didn't believe me. And he was to be our tour guide, so he didn't show up to work the next day. And I said, well, I'll take you around. I know the islands pretty well. So we're going up this mountainside, and there he was with another group. He decided that I was not to be worked with, So eventually I ended up on Molokai. You know what Molokai is? It was where they had the old leper colony, yeah? Well, it's where a lot of the native peoples live. And the haoles don't go there so much. However, the Japanese have this beautiful golf course. And so, some of the haoles go there and play golf and whatnot. So I'm in bed, like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, Spirit wakes me up, says, get up, there's somebody for you to meet. And I went outside, and there was a natural Hawaiian driving a security car. And he saw me, and we started talking, and he knew he could trust me. So I said, I've been out here looking for places where there were holy places here. And he said, well, there are many, as you know. I said, yeah. He said, this island, Molokai, was run by magicians who were so powerful that when Kamehameha was out uniting all the islands, he wouldn't come near the place. He was afraid. The old entrance exam to go to medical school there. How are you? Good? Yeah? And you? So many familiar faces. The entrance exam was they would lay down a thing on the sand, like your image, and put stones on the chi, the energy lines. And if you had a problem, that's where the line was broken. So you were brought in, they'd say, well, do a diagnosis. Well, I can see by that, blah, blah, blah. And then the other entrance exam was you had to pray a pig to death and then bring it back to life. You think we've got it bad in med school here? That was tough. That was tough. But I finally got to meet a real Hawaiian, and we talked very openly. There was nobody around, you see, so he didn't have to worry about what he was sharing with me, and he knew he could trust me. And I told him I was looking for places where the ancients were buried or whatever. And he said, well, I think we used to be Egyptians because we used to mummify our kings and queens and put them in outriggers and put them in caves, but we never told anybody where they were because they would be robbed, just like they did in Egypt, and they still do. So we were chatting, and he said, when the people came here and took our country away from us, it would have been either you or the French or the Germans or whatever. Somebody was going to do it at some point. But like on the mainland, you have reserves for your native peoples, such as they are, which is really disgraceful for us, I think. But he said, we have nothing here. We have nothing. And we don't get good jobs. We don't get anything. So a lot of our young people are becoming alcoholics and committing suicide. So what we're doing now is reviving the old way, the way of the Huna lifestyle. And we're teaching it to our young people so that we can bring them back into the arms of, the great love. And so then somebody was coming, and he acted like he didn't know who I was at all, that he had shared, and that was his purpose. I was thrilled. I'd been there 4 times, never met a real Hawaiian. Finally, I got to meet one. Thank God I listened to my voice that said, get up and get outside, Got to do that. And I'm going back at some point. I don't know when. I just know I'm going back. One of the problems on the islands is that the kahunas, or the spiritual religious leaders, they can marry their own people, but they're not legal. If I go back, I can ordain the kahunas, and then they can legally marry their own people. Isn't that wonderful? Yeah, so I'm anxious to do that. So, kukui beads, these are called kukui nuts, and they're full of wax, and basically they can act like candles. So they're given to a teacher because we are the bearers of the light. All right? So it's like being a walking chandelier. So I was thinking about what I would share with you today, and I've already shared more than I thought I was going to, but I thought to myself, it's a good thing. The Huna religion is very sacred and very special. We don't know much about it in this country. At least I'm assuming that maybe you don't, but maybe you know more than I. But Carl Jung, Edgar Cayce, had concepts about the superconscious, the subconscious, and the conscious mind. 3 aspects of oneself. The vehicle that you're walking around is your house, your temple, okay? But it is not a consciousness per se. I mean, it is connected to everything that is, so there's some level of reality there. But if I said, who are you? I'm not asking for your name per se, although that would be lovely. You know yourself by your identity, what your name was that you were given, and things that you've done in your life. So, well, that's who I am. Well, you're still probably thinking that you're this. And you're more than this. I mean, how many of you have had near-death experiences in the room? Okay, there's a few of you. Wonderful. Okay. Because what happens when you have a near-death is that you no longer just associate with your form, your physical nature. You know there's so much more. There was one man who had a pneumonia, and he died when they were x-raying him, and he got out of his body. He didn't even know he was dead. He went all the way to Virginia in a split second. It didn't occur to him that that was unusual. He comes back to the hospital. Somebody walks right through him. Even then he didn't get it, But he went into the room where his corpse was, and he had a signet ring on his hand that was dangling off the bedsheet. And that's how he identified himself. He didn't recognize this. And he was so huge, his energy body was so huge. How am I going to get all of that into that? But we do. Of course, we hang out, let's call the aura, But it was just to recognize that when you've had a near death, you no longer are the same. You're not the same. And how many of you had a near death were divorced in about 2 years? Anybody? Except me? Well, if you don't want to own up to it, that's okay. Have a divorce after your near-death experience. It's usually about 2 years after, because your partner says, I don't know who you are anymore. I can't relate to you. I can't make that connection, They need to be with somebody else, and so do you. So, it just kind of happens. The plan, you see, was that we would have millions of people all around the world in every segment of society have a near-death experience. Because then they would be quasi-enlightened enough to come back into this level of reality to teach the rest of us what's really going on here. So if you've had, yeah. Yes, you can have it in a dream, yeah. Yeah, well, that's kind of an awakening. I mean, these people, I think I told you this last year, but forgive me because I don't remember everything. But anyway, many years ago, about 40, Tom Sawyer, who's a friend of mine, who's a very profound death experiencer and whatever, he told me, I thought it was a joke, he said John the Baptist used to hold people under the water a long time. I thought he was kidding. Well, then I was having dinner with a friend of mine in Sarasota, Florida, 2 years ago. And I said, tell me that story again about how you died. Because she had a very profound death experience. And she had 5 diseases in her body, killing each other and killing her at the same time. She had a dream that she was crawling out of a well. There was a green vine, and when she got to the top, there was white light. She woke up, and she was totally cured. Well, I love that story. It's like a little kid, Mommy, tell me that story again, So she said, I've had like 4. I said, well, what were the other ones? She said, well, I had a blood poisoning when I was a child, and I saw myself from up there looking down, and I was knowing that they were doing the wrong procedure to bring me back, And then she was married to a guy in Ohio, one of 2 or 3 husbands that she's had. And he liked kayaking or whatever they do on some river in Ohio. And she said her boat flipped, and the boat was keeping her underwater. And she was like, I was actually breathing water. And then she said, the peace came. Some of you who've been through that, you know what I'm talking about. The next one, same husband, another boat, another trip, another river. And you know how sometimes a tree grows near the creek or the river, and the branches the roots are coming up underneath. Well, her boat flipped. Now, she had a life vest on, just for caution. The roots of the tree went under her life vest and kept her underwater. Well, hey, some of us are stupid. They'll do anything to wake us up, right? So, once again, the peace comes. Now, Jesus showed up. Her inclination was for Jesus, I guess. So he showed up, and he said, Marta, did you know that when my cousin John used to baptize people, I held them under the water a long time? I said, what did you say? She said, well, I said, no, you don't understand. 40 years ago, Tom Sawyer told me that. And I thought he was joking. Obviously, it was true, because what John was doing was waking you up. He must have had some kind of a spiritual time watch. All right. Because I had a dream not too long ago, and Tom Sawyer was underwater, and he was sleeping. And this guy was there with a watch, and he said, well, he's almost ready now. And then he was going to, pull him up out of the water. So I had to laugh about that. But it's so true. I've had several of those things, starting at 5, shut in an ice box, and then I nearly drowned, and then was in a car accident, and then on an airplane going to Tibet, and then falling off my kitchen counter. So each time, there's been a gift. And so if I'm saying, who am I, or who are you, I'm wanting to know who are all of yourselves, because you are not this totally. You live in this house. But, if you buy a new house, you move in, then the house becomes you, and you become the house, right? So if you've had a death experience, this is the old house, but now you're different, and your perceptions are different. So in the Huna religion, there are 3 selves. There's the high self, Amakua, the middle self, and the low self. In Jung, that would be the superconscious mind, the subconscious, and the conscious mind. In Edgar Cayce, this is your temple. So your conscious mind is the outer courtyard of the temple. The superconscious mind is the holy of holies in the temple. And then beyond that is the superconscious mind, which is the God self or your high self. Now, each and every one of us has all of this, whether you know it or not. All right? When some of you have been through therapy and they said, well, we want to talk to your little child. I was talking to Jim about this earlier today. I said, what do you say to Jimmy? And what are you talking about? I said, well, we still have that child in memory inside ourselves. So in the Huna way, your Amakua or your high self would be talking to your child and loving your child and encouraging your child. And whatever you've been through in your childhood, your Amakua is the unconditional lover that can encourage that child to have aspirations, which would then come up through your subconscious to your conscious and then your higher self. It's really kind of a fascinating thing. But we're so unused to that in this culture. We have groups, and I belong to them, that you have to have a higher power. I don't care if it's a kitchen sink. You've got to have a higher power. So, the higher power is that, do any of you see auras and orbs and all that? Many of you do? Wonderful. Okay. Well, then you're probably looking at mine. Above the top of my head is a ball of white light. My aura color is green. It's not easy being green. But it changes as I'm working, so you've probably seen some of that. But everybody has that. So what's that story? It was like Edgar Cayce. He was getting in an elevator and the door opened and he looked in and nobody had their orb here, so he didn't get on. And then the thing went and crashed or something like that. So every time I get on a plane, I'm looking. Wrong plane. I'm not going to that destination right now. But so if you only say, who are you? But now you're also recognizing, I'm this, and I'm this. And what the Huna says is that they all are interpenetrating. In other words, they're not separate from one another. We talk about them in three separate terms, but basically they're all integrated. So your higher self is like your great parent, but in a very loving, kind way. All right? It's yin and yang. It's androgynous in terms of its energy. All right? But that's your high self. And that's the dream level when you have a seventh level dream. A seventh level dream is when you hear a voice, a direct voice, usually giving you instruction, or it's so divinely inspiring it changes your life. Any of you had those? A lot of you have, yeah. So that's your higher self basically talking to you, your Amakua. All right, but you can talk to that and you can think to it. So right now I'm having my Amakua talk to Danny, my little self, and giving him encouragement and all that. So my memories are me being held by my mother when I was very little and rocked in her rocking chair and all that. So I'm rebuilding some of those old ideas, and I'm talking to little Danny because he has the idea of what my perfect body would be, just as you all have. So you're born with an idea, and that's your perfect sense. We all walk around here and say, oh my God, nobody's perfect. It's not true. We're made of God, and there's only God. So that's called perfection. So whatever you've chosen to be at this moment is your perfection. You might not look at it in the mirror and say, oh, that's certainly not perfect or whatever, but it is. It's given you in that moment everything you need to know what love and creativity is all about. Right? So embrace that self. You can change, you can do anything you want with it, but always remember you were only ever always perfect. You're made of God and God's perfection. The thing about you and God is, or me and you and God is constantly with you as an unconditional lover, totally unconditional. And if I say to you, do you love yourself? You'll tell me all kinds of stories. Well, I'm trying, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. No, it's yes or no. And despite everything that you learned from the time you were born, or even as a little zygote in your mother, you have the ability to say yes to that. Yes, I do love myself. And that gives God permission to also love you too. Okay, because, here's a question, and I would like a show of hands. How many of you are really good at giving, but not so easy on the receiving end? Anybody? Look around the room briefly. Okay, I'm a cosmic cop. You're all under arrest. You're all getting a ticket today. Yeah, because if I'm God and I'm wanting to love you, you've just told me that you don't receive. How can I help you? God and free will are equal in power. It's an awesome thing. And think about that for a while, right? When Tom Sawyer was here, he said there are only two beings who can give you unconditional love. God is one, you're the other for yourself. So why are you holding out? 50% of the battle is won. Right? You go home and chew on that today when you're having your Sunday dinner or whatever you're going to have. It's just an easy process of saying yes. God who loves you, wants to give to you, wants to honor you, wants to play with you, wants to do everything you've ever imagined a God would be and do for you, but cannot do it without your permission. And most of you who just said you don't allow yourself to receive. Change your mind. Tom Sawyer would say, if you change your attitude, you can shift a galaxy. Here's a galaxy. They're all the thoughts and ideas about who I am. Who are you? Well, I've got all this going on. They're just thoughts. And I have an attitude about that. Right? He says, shift your attitude. Change your mind. And you change your galaxy. And then as that feeds down through your body, you change yourself. Right? So that's why when people have near-death experience, their partner says, I don't know who you are. Because you've not another perception of who and what your nature is and what you can do with that life. The three questions in Huna are, who are you? And you get to think about that because now I've given you some ideas, perhaps. What are you doing here? Well, I'm sitting here listening to you gab or whatever you're doing. No, what are you doing here? And what should you, and don't use should as the bad thing, but what should you be doing with your life? You'll have ideas about that even right now, right this second while I'm talking to you. So it's like, well, what are you doing about it? Well, all I'm suggesting is you get in touch with your higher self, Amakua, God, whatever you want to call that energy. Know that it is totally and always connected to you. You cannot separate that, all right? Everything is connected to God. That's how, was it on the internet a few months ago, they said they found something that travels faster than the speed of light. Did you see that? It's called neutrinos. And that's unconditional love, which they'll never find in a test tube. It's God. That's why God knows everything about itself instantly because it is all of itself. It's like if I hit my toe with a hammer, my body's going to get the message eventually, But there is no time in God. There is no space in God. There's only God. And that's true always. We have a concept of time. Casey said, we invented time to give us whatever. Well, how many moons ago did you do that? But actually, there is no past, present, or future. There's just now. And we're living now. This is it, right? But you have ideas and attitudes about who you are now that if you wish to, you can change. When Tom sank an ICBM missile going on target to Las Vegas many years ago, which caused the Tomahawk cruise missile to drop instantly in the desert, he did 3 of them. And how did he do it? By loving an electron. Tomahawk cruise missile has 7 computers in the nose cone. If it malfunctions, one of them, it drops right there. It's called surgical bombing if you send it to target. Like if we wanted it to come through this window, that's all that it would do. It would cross the whole United States and come through that window, except if it malfunctions. So he got into one of the computers in the nose cone, into a plastic part, into a molecule, into an atom, the nucleus of an atom. Look at people looking around. Where is it? Those are drones, darling. And he loved an electron. He waited for the electron to come around in its cyclical pattern forever, ever, ever. And it went, oh! And that was just enough to do a ricochet effect on that atom, which then went through the whole system, and that's how he sank an ICBM missile. He says, love is very powerful, whether you believe it or not, it is. And as far as accepting love in your life, it's yes or no. He says, everything responds to love, it's yes or no. So what good is it to do the no thing? Right? A lot of you say, well, I was word, I was hooned, and I was this, and I, well, fine. That's how you got here. But now you can choose to say yes to love and yes to life and make a big change in your life. What should you be doing with your life? Well, a lot of you have ideas. Some of you have started. It's never too late. Did you see the new movie Exodus? Any of you see that? I'm the only one who watched that thing? Well, the old one had Chuck Heston in it. You remember that one back from what, 56 or whatever it was, 59? This one is a newer version of that. The special effects are unbelievable. Best part of the movie. What did they do wrong? They made Moses a warrior. He was real butch and really, The truth is, Moses was in his 70s when he went back to get his people. He was an old guy. And I keep waiting for them to make the correct version of the movie. Show this, like a guy, I'm 70 now, and see me going up to my brother and to get my people out of prison, Well, that's a true story. Of course, then he took them on their wilderness walk, which meant If you've been on welfare for a generation or two, you have welfare mentality. I had it. All right? So the reason why that generation did not go into the promised land is they believed, just an idea, they didn't deserve it. So they went until all those people died off, the next generation that was not born in slavery knew that they could take the promised land. And so they did. So what are we doing in this generation? We're struggling with equality. You know, there are still states in the United States that are attempting to pass laws that will allow Christians to discriminate. What? What? You know, are we going to pass a law next week that allows everybody to go to the back of the bus again? That's kind of what it's like. Did you see the film, The Imitation Game? Anybody? Isn't it wonderful? Well, you know, it's kind of hard to watch, but it is a true story. It's about a gay mathematician as a child. He's a genius, so he has no real social skills per se, but he falls in love with another guy in school whose name is Christopher. And then as he grows up, you know, then World War II comes, and we were trying to change or get into the code that the Nazis were using to start their wars every day. You know? Nobody could figure it out. It's called Enigma. Well, this genius figures it out eventually. He invents a machine that he calls Christopher. Right? And he breaks the code. He saved millions of lives all around the world by figuring out what the Nazis were talking to each other about every day, where they were going to be and who they were going to strike and all that. He broke that code, and then they swore him to secrecy. They didn't want anybody to know, you know, what had been going on. So basically, at some point in his life, they also discovered that he was a homosexual. It was against the law in Britain. It didn't care who you were or what you made as a contribution. So he had an option when he was arrested. You either go to prison or you become castrated and go on hormones. So he went castrated. And toward the end of the film, I hope you watch it if you haven't seen it. You really get a great education. He says goodnight to Christopher, the machine in the other room. That had been his lover as a boy. And later in the end clips of the movie, they talk about Queen Elizabeth finally giving this man like the Medal of Honor or something for having made this incredible contribution. In his life, he didn't get that. All right? You all have computers? Pretty much, right? You know who got you those? Alan Turing, this young man. His genius that created the machine that broke Enigma later got translated on down into computers, smartphones, right? All of that is a gift from this man. What eventually he did was he committed suicide. Too many of our incredibly gifted people who happen to be gay, lesbian, whatever, also have taken that route because they didn't feel included. Where's God in all this? I love you. It doesn't matter what your color of your skin is, how much money you've got, what education you've had, who you sleep with. None of that matters to God. It's all God and it's all good. God loves you. You have to love yourself. You have to give yourself that gift. Now, here we are in this culture of our situation. This is what still may, right? Toward the end of next month, the Supreme Court will probably decide that same-sex marriage is universal. Wonderful. It's happening all around the world. Did you see in Ireland what they're about to do? Yeah? Times are changing, and they're beautiful. Did you see what, Prince Charles did the other day? He shook the hands of a former Irish rebellion leader, the same man who most likely had killed his great-uncle when they were going through the controversy. Now, that doesn't happen anymore. So we've got a whole planet. We've got all this ISIS stuff going on. But a lot of these are men who are angry and fighting and wanting to make things their way and all that. This is the end of patriarchy. In another generation, when we're gone, the next generation will not know this, will not know segregation, will not know racism or classism or discriminations. It'll just be passé. I know it sounds like, boy, you're a dreamer. Well, yeah, I love John Lennon's song. Yeah? So, you know, it's time for us to realize that older generation that still runs Congress and does all that they do, they're going to die. Everybody does. You know, from the minute you got here, you're going to die. Or graduate, as we say. Thomas used to say, this is a school. You're all in school. And when it's time for you to leave, you graduate. There's a big party over there. Your new birthday is the day that you got there. Right? Over here, you know, we have people left grieving and all that. Well, I cried the day my son graduated from high school because I didn't know till they gave him that diploma that he actually was going to do it. He was a fun kid. So, but if you need to cry when somebody graduates, fine. Just understand, you get call them on the phone or take them out for coffee anymore. They're over there doing their thing. There is no death. Einstein said you cannot destroy energy. And what are we? We're energy. But you can't live in this spacesuit forever. The Amakua, the middle self, and the lower self, step out when you're done, when you graduate here. And that's it. And unless there's something done to your body, sometimes they come back in. But usually now they'll stay out. You might see them in a dream. They might pop into your house. One of my students, her name is Karen. She became a priest several years ago at St. Patty's Day, and she's Irish. I call her the Irish broad because she shoots from the hip, right? And she became almost paralyzed for 3 days after her ordination. She couldn't walk. And then she was given a guardian angel. That's something a lot of you also have, a guardian angel. And his name was Chucky, and he was a biker when he was here. So his job is to help her in this lifetime. Now, she's very open-minded. She calls people from the Middle East dot heads and towel heads. No. And she's rather racist. And I said, Karen, that's bad karma. Don't you get it? Well, she's coming along. But anyway, Karen's father graduated, they're next door neighbors. Within less than an hour, he was back in her kitchen talking to her. And now she's a medium. She can see and hear and all that. So she says, Dad, what are you doing here? He says, well, I left your mother a policy, an insurance policy, in the upstairs in the drawer, and I want you to go over and make sure that she gets it. Well, her mom and dad had this kind of loving relationship. You miserable. They were always good. That's how they loved each other, terms of endearment, right? Some of you have been there. So anyway, she goes over to talk to her mother, who doesn't believe in all of this that we're talking about. And she says, Mom, Dad just showed up in my kitchen. And he wants me to go upstairs and get this insurance policy. Your father didn't leave me a thing. She said, well, do you mind? No, go ahead. So she went up, found the policy, brought it down, gave it to her mother. Mother had to do two things. Realize that Dick wasn't dead. He just wasn't in a body. And he really did love her, and he provided. So now she had to deal with that. Every now and then she says, well, have you talked to your father lately? She's on her way. She doesn't know it, but she's on her way. Yeah, she's really a sweetheart. She's one of these people, you would not want to go near her because you think she'd bite your head off, but actually she's a very loving soul. So I call her Granny Brown. She's a lot of fun. So we have these three selves that are all intertwined, and they're all working toward your highest good. They have a dilemma. You have free will. If you choose not to love yourself, if you choose not to do what you should be doing, and don't hear that should all over me, no, don't go there. But it's like you have the opportunity to do anything. God can't interfere with that as if I couldn't give you anything because you don't receive, okay? So you can use one of yourselves who has a will center to change your attitude, change your mind. It's never too late. Do you know that right now you are the end result of every past life that you've ever had? From the beginning when God first imagined you, you were given one of these or some version of it, and you had the ability to use free will. This is funny. This is really funny. When Tom Sawyer was dead and one with God, God said to Tom, about free will, I think I made a mistake. Too late now. Too late now. They're not coming back, So you have the ability to use your will with love and power to change your life. You don't have to have a death experience, as this lady did not. You can have a death experience, a death to the old self and birth to the new self, just by changing your attitude, by changing your mind. Yes or no? No has its end result, and that's fine. You see, when people pass over, some people, we would say, went to the dark side. Tom Sawyer said, it doesn't matter. Whether you come home in the light, you come home in the dark. Everybody comes home. God's an unconditional lover. So if you choose to be miserable and nasty and whatever, fine. You learn from that. All right. One of my friends who saw her life reviews said that every lifetime she ever had and used free will created the next lifetime. So each and every one of you in this room right now is already existing in future time, whatever that is, all right, as a being who is going to live a life according to what you believe about yourself in the present moment. Now, if you had a chance to look down and see that, because it comes up like a spiral, so, well, hell, I don't want to have that kind of a life. Change. Ebenezer Scrooge did it. There's your role model. right? He did. He changed, and Tiny Tim got to a doctor, and everybody lived happily ever after. So you are supposed to meet somebody 20 years from now. But if you don't change, that person is going to meet that person. If you change, they're going to meet the new you. And that may be just what they need. They need a role model. All right? So it's an amazing thing, and it's so simple. It's yes or no. Every day. You know, and thank God you only get one day at a time, right? Yesterday's gone. Forget it. The reason why Tibetans live to be so old is because they don't worry about yesterday. They're aware of today, but they don't get angst about tomorrow. They're relatively stress-free. We spend a lot of time going over the past. As one gets older, you're thinking about things that happened 20, 30, 40 years ago. I'm driving the car and I'm still in high school. I say, what are you doing? You know, okay, it was fine, but why did you go there? Well, I have a chance to change that, change my attitude about it, right? If I think about the future, well, that's okay too, but I can create a better future in the present moment. But God can't help me without my giving my permission. So you invite your Amakua, or you invite your God or your higher power into your day-to-day experience, talk to your little or your low self, and then work, you know, in unison with all your parts. Who are you? You know, in the old days, if you came to school with me, I would say, okay, who are you astrologically? Do you know who you are? Do you know your ascendant? Do you know where your moon is? What are you talking about? Most of us don't know any of that. So then you're missing out on astrologically finding out who you are. Who are you numerologically? You know, we're all a set of numbers. It's all vibration. That's what Alan Turing found when he invented that machine, you know. So it's like, if you don't know who you are, find out. It's really easy to do. You go to 1 and down to 9 and back to 1, or 1 to 8 and back to 1. A is 1, B is 2, C is 3. So you were given a name. Now in our culture, women change their names often when they get married. In 1 year, you will shift your personality because the vibration of that new name is going to do that to you. If you have a child and she's little Betsy, and then you change your name to Harriet or something, it'll take her a few months to change to become Harriet, whereas it takes an adult about a year to change. I have a lovely man from Canada who just got ordained 2-3 months ago. He's becoming Carol. So he's partway there. He hasn't had the surgery or any of the reassignments yet, but he will change his name. He's already got a new name for him, in that next life. There's a woman in Manhattan. Her name is Moses. She had been a man. Well, still is in a sense, you know what I'm saying. But she went through all the sexual reassignment surgery and became this beautiful, very big black woman, gorgeous looking person. She got ordained. You know what her ministry is? To transgendered people. Now, you and I could have compassion for that, but unless you've been through that, you're not going to quite get it. Compassion allows you to have the ultimate political correctness. I know a lot of you say, I am sick of that. I think they should just get rid of that whole thing. You be the person who doesn't receive love and compassion from the imbalance of that political correct. My friend Karen gave me this big talk the other day about how she's so sick of this thing. I said, Karen, ultimately to be so sensitive to everybody and everything, every sentient being would have your love and compassion. That's what I love about the Dalai Lama. He is phenomenal. I think I told you this last year. He's what now, 78, something like that? Some of you know. They asked him if he was going to come back and be the next Dalai Lama. He said, I don't know. It really depends on the Tibetans. If they want me to be the next Dalai Lama, then of course I'll be back. Well, he took and he teaches the vow of the Bodhisattva, which means he will come back until the last person wakes up. Could be a while. However, he said, I think, you know, I've already lived longer than I've ever lived in any lifetime. But I think when I come back the next time, I'll come back as a beautiful woman. He said, why would you want that? He said, well, if you've got to listen to somebody lecture for 4 hours, wouldn't you rather be looking at an attractive woman? That man has a great sense of humor. Humor gets you through the day. You know, how many of you talk to yourself? Oh, good. How many of you talk about yourself? Oh, good. Even better. You're on a good road. Okay. You know, when you die again, because you've done this a lot already, you're going to have a life review. And in your life review, you're going to hear every time anyone ever spoke your name and why. Wow. You're going to hear what they said and what that was all about. Well, you've got to know how well you've done here. So how well are you going to know? You're going to ask all your friends or your neighbors or your former enemies to what their opinion of you was. That's how you're going to judge how well you did. There is no judgment, there's no hell, there's no sin, there's no evil. But there is balance. Okay? A lot of us have friends and neighbors and companions who, toward the end of their life here, before they graduated, they had a very difficult time. And you're looking at this, why does God allow this to happen? God had nothing to do with it. That person's free will from the time they were born till they got here, they made decisions and they did things. Let's say this, we'll call it a guy. He's a great orator, a great teacher. But toward the end of his life, he's in the drill bib and he's got to have somebody change his depends and all that kind of stuff. He said, oh, what a terrible thing. No, it's about balance. How you lived and how you die is direct proportion. Okay, so if you're dealing with that now, look at that person in a new light and see that they are, hi, Bonnie, I didn't see you there. Hi, Margaret. And so it's not about judgment, but it is you yourself. My mom used to say, if you're going to dance, you've got to pay the fiddler. Right? Well, fortunately, in this lifetime, you get to pay the fiddler. So when somebody is in their last stages before they graduate, and you're looking at them and say, oh, what a terrible thing. No, it's a blessing. Look for the gift. Even if they're unconscious, they're still there. You can still hear. All right? And you can still send out energies and that kind of good thing. So just be aware when you go to visit, you have an opportunity to extend love and compassion rather than thinking, oh, what a terrible thing. I remember when he was such a great speaker and he did this and he did that. Well, yeah, that was one part. But what was the rest of what was going on that has created this for him by free will choice? And you get to embrace that whole thing. God's already doing it. God's already doing it. There's no unfortunate death. There are no accidents. There are no coincidences. You throw all that into this kettle, it gets to be pretty interesting, does it not? So take yourself home today and think about your life and think about what you should be doing that you're not doing yet, but you intend to do. It's never too late. Get out that list of things that you want to do, like jump off a cliff with an umbrella or whatever. That I'm not going to do that one. I still want to have lunch in Paris and see the Eiffel Tower. That's still on my list. But, it's never too late. But you've already told me you don't receive. Get over it. I don't care if it's a grain of salt. That somebody, what do they say to you? And what can I do for you? You say, oh, nothing, I'm fine. On the other hand, you're asking for a new car, you're asking for a new lover, you're asking for whatever, but you're not going to receive because you won't allow yourself to take. So when this person says, what can I do for you? Make up something. I have a morbidly obese cat at home, right? She's like 35 pounds. She's so big she can't even wash her you-know-what. So we have to give her a bath every week, pretty much. She doesn't mind now. She didn't like it at first. So if you're asking me, well, what can I do for you, Dan? I said, wash my cat. Please wash my cat. Take my wife, please. Right? So it's like, they want to love you back. That's really what they're trying to say. What can I do for you? We all have needs. God's helping, but you're saying I don't receive. Well, can't help that. So here's somebody saying, and what can I do for you? Make up something. It's all energy. It's about the exchange. And they've been trying to love you for years, and now you finally let them do it. Oh, gosh. I had a sister who was very generous, but you couldn't give her anything. And then after our mother died and her graduated, and her husband graduated, then she was vulnerable, and she allowed me to give to her. What a blessing that was. I could finally do something for her. She's my older sister, Oh, you've got to hear this. This is wonderful. I already told Bonnie this morning. She's 78, my older sister. She's 8 years my senior. She's got the body of Tina Turner. I kid you not. She's gorgeous, right? Her face, looks like she stepped into a wind machine or something. But she's got all this energy. She loves to smoke. She loves to drink. She's a fun house. I took her to P-Town once and she stole the show. She went out in the ballroom and she was doing the shimmy like Rita Hayworth. Every gay guy in time came to her and hugged her and kissed her. I said, great, I'm out here for years. Nobody talks to me. And you show up and you do the shimmy and they all come running. So anyway, she goes to the beach every day. As soon as it gets warm, the sun's out, she goes to the beach. She's got a great little figure, right? And she's walking the beach. This older guy walks up to her and he's got a cane. He's not feeble or anything. Apparently he was nice looking. And he walked up at her and he said, I want to give you a kiss. Now what do you say to that? I mean, if it's not been a while, maybe, oh, please, play one on me. So she kissed him. She said, I thought I might have killed him, But she kissed him, he went away. He comes back the next day. And he said, I would like to take you out for a cocktail. She said, okay, well, where do you live? So she told him, and he showed up in this beautiful Mercedes-Benz with all the bells and whistles. Now, here's an old school gentleman. He opens the door for her. He pushes in the seat. He won't let her touch the door. He comes around and he opens it for her. She sits down. He takes her to lunch and dinner, well, for cocktails. So after cocktails, he said, would you come to my apartment? She said, no, I don't know you. He said, oh, I'm so sorry. I've not been dating in a long time, and I'm kind of not, She said, it's fine. So they went out and they had a few lunches and a few suppers, and then finally she goes to the apartment, right? So in a paper bag, she had a teddy. And he said, what's in the paper bag? She said, it's a teddy. He said, what's that? She said, you don't know what a teddy is? He said, no. She said, I'll show you. Some of you have already gone there. So she comes out of the bathroom in her teddy, right? She said they had the most wonderful, passionate sex for hours. The rest of the story, he's 90 years old. I know. There's hope for the rest of us, right? So they've been seeing each other now for 2 years. He went to Arizona for the winter and called her every day. And his daughter out there said, well, bring her with you. Well, my sister's so planted at home, she'll never go. But it'd be a shame because she could learn a lot. That's her choice. So anyway, he's home for like 3 hours. He's already at the door. Hey, I missed you. I bet you did. So he brings her liquor. He brings her gifts like jewelry, like the old guys used to do, years ago. She said, I feel like I've known him my whole life. Now, she's 78. She could go any minute. She's got like liver stuff and all this from the smoking. And I swear to God, if she didn't have a drink and a cigarette in the morning, she'd be dead. Really, because liquor thins your blood and all that stuff. And he comes over every day, and they go out to dinner, and he buys her the most wonderful things, and he says, hey, I can afford it. Just so now she is on the receiving end also, see? You got to do this. You never know who's going to come walking up Main Street in St. Paul and say, hey, can I kiss you, right? Hey! You have options. You're not graduated yet if you're still here, right? So whether you're a second old or 116, however that lady was the other day I saw on the news, you're still here to learn. You're here to learn about love and creativity against a backdrop of what? Greed and ego. And boy, haven't we seen that a lot lately. Until this generation passes, probably the next one that comes behind us is finally going to come into the place where we have egalitarianism or equality among all sentient beings, not just the two-leggeds, the four-leggeds, the wingeds, the tree people. Did you see that on the internet too? They finally discovered that trees talk to each other. Isn't that great? We all knew that already. But that people are realizing that there's so much that's connecting. The whole universe is connected. And you're a part of that, except in your mind, in your imagination. If you believe you're alone or you're separate, then you are, but it's not real. So embrace your amakua, your high self. Have it feed your middle and lower nature. Encourage the child within you to grow and laugh and have a good time. And when somebody walks up to you and says, can I give you a kiss? If you've asked God for a lover and you refuse a kiss, remember that old joke about the guy who was on the rooftop and there was all the storms and the Marine showed up? Remember that story? God, what a joke that was. And then the guy dies because he drowned. God said, I sent you the Coast Guard, the Marines, the Army. You refused all of it. That's why you're here. So when somebody shows up in your life and wants to love you, you've got nothing less to do than to love yourself first and then love your friend. That's what this is all about. It's the great aloha. Right? Mahalo. Thank you. Many blessings. Aloha.